Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, Liz's boss, that's the Chancellor, Philip Hammond, Mr. Happy, could have less money to play with in next month's budget. Why is that? Well, it's up to the government's own fiscal watchdog. The Office for Budget Responsibility said that productivity had been lower in recent years than they previously thought. They had to redo their calculations too. It's a constant theme of this morning, really. It comes on top of a raft of new spending commitments from the government, which will make spreadsheet Phil's job next month even harder. Emma's been looking at the black holes in both the party's spending plans.
That's right, Andrew. Yesterday, the Independent Office for Budget Responsibility downgraded their recent productivity forecasts. They said that productivity, which is measured by the amount generated by each worker per hour, has grown by just 0.2% a year on average over the last 5 years. According to the most recent figures, productivity is actually falling by 0.1% in the second quarter of this year. The OBR have pointed out that lower productivity will weaken the public finances, and as Andrew said, that will make the budget harder for Philip Hammond in November. And it'll be harder still because of all the new spending commitments that were made at the Conservative Party conference last week. An extra $2 billion for new affordable homes, a $10 billion extension of the Help to Buy scheme, and $1.2 billion for changes to the tuition fees system. And yesterday, the Health Secretary, Jeremy Hunt, said that the pay cap in the NHS has been scrapped. And don't forget, after the election, the Conservatives committed an extra £1 billion of funding for Northern Ireland as part of their deal with the DUP. And after his last budget in March, Philip Hammond had to U-turn on his plans to raise Class 4 national insurance contributions on self-employed people at a cost of £2 billion in lost revenue. Labour have also been feeling generous at their conference. The Shadow Chancellor, John McDonnell, said he would bring existing PFI contracts, which are worth up to £200 billion, back in-house. And during the election, the Institute for Fiscal Studies said that there was a hole of at least £9 billion in Labour's tax plans. Andrew.
Thanks for that, Emma. But Liz Truss, why has productivity growth been so lamentable under your government?
Well, the core issues that are underpinning low productivity in our economy are very long-term. So poor levels of skills, not good enough infrastructure, not good enough capital investment.
But it's got worse. It's got worse under your government. They take a long
time to fix.
But it's got worse. It's not that you haven't done enough to fix them. They've actually got worse. Average growth has been 0.2% a year for the past 5 years. Historically, that's the worst in living memory.
But if you think about how long things like the education system take to fix, so we've reformed GCSEs and A-levels, but the students sitting them have just done their exams this year. They're not yet entering the workforce. If you think about our plans in areas like Crossrail, that's being built at the moment. So the productivity problems in our economy are long-term problems. We've had them for 30, 40, 50 years.
I understand that.
And you don't get sudden gratification, Andrew, of, you spend it this year and you get a productivity improvement
Believe me, doing this programme,
next year.
you are a stranger to sudden gratification. But you're not answering the question, because everything you've saying, of course it takes time to make long-term supply-side changes in the economy. I do understand that. But that would explain why productivity hasn't increased very quickly and that you've still got more to go. The point is that in the period up to 2008, productivity was rising by 2% a year. It's now rising by 0.2% a year. Why has it got worse?
I think it's a combination of factors. Of course, the crash took a lot of capacity out of the economy globally. Many countries, including the UK, have ended up with huge debts, which places a burden on society. We've also had the issue that rather than laying people off, employers have kept people on and not invested so much in capital. That's had a huge benefit in that we've got the lowest unemployment rates since 1975. But we haven't seen that capital investment. So for my mind, I would rather have the situation that we've had over the last 7 years, where we've kept people in work, we've not lost skills, but we haven't had the productivity gains that we'd like to see. And that's why we're introducing new T levels, We're introducing new investment. We're moving from spending £1 in every 13 on capital investment to £1 in every 7. But as I've said, Andrew, these things will take time to come through.
I got that point. One thing low productivity is doing, as well as hitting wages, which in real terms are stagnant, is it's hitting our growth rate now. Can you name any other EU country that is growing more slowly than Britain at the moment?
I don't have those figures to hand, Andrew.
Well, I can. I looked at the usual suspects, starting with Greece. Even Greece is growing more quickly than us.
Well, we have a good rate of growth over the last 7 years, of course.
But not since you voted to remain.
15% since 2010.
But it is affecting our growth now, and it's affecting living standards, isn't it?
Well, of course, if we want to see people's wages increase and living standards increase, we have to raise productivity. That's crucial. But let's not take for granted the fact we've got record levels of employment. That is very important. And what I think is also important is it's the bottom 3 deciles of the population that have done particularly well. They've seen their earnings rise faster. They've seen living standards rise faster. And that is hugely important.
You say it will take time, but the OBR, having monitored that you've presided over this very slow growth in productivity for the past 5 years, is now reducing its forecast for the next 5 years. So how long have we got?
Well, we need to. That's why we introduced measures in the last budget to improve productivity.
But it's taken these into account, the OBR, and yet it's still reducing its productivity.
And we're looking at further measures we can take, because I agree with you, it's incredibly important we address that.
It's 10 lost years we're talking about now.
Well, the 2008 crash had a huge impact, and it's had a huge impact across the globe. I've just been in Japan. They've suffered from 20 years of stagnation. We're not unique in facing these problems, and that's why the answer is not renationalising industry and doing away with private enterprise. The answer is growing our start-up companies, scaling up more companies. That's
well, Labour is now committed to a major nationalisation programme. That was in your manifesto and reinforced with bells on at the Labour conference. Can you give us an example of where nationalising something has raised the productivity?
Well, we want to nationalise things for a good reason. So where we think something's not working, like the water industry, like the railways, are not working for the benefit of consumers, then we'll look at it. This isn't something we want to do for the sake of it.
No, but we're talking about productivity. And my question is, given that you are planning to spend tens of billions of pounds on this, can you give me an example of where nationalising something has raised the productivity?
What I would look at is skills, and I think what you have at the moment is
that's not nationalisation. It's a simple question I'm asking you, because you're committed to nationalising now a range of industries, from water to electricity to the railways. I'll ask one more time. Can you give me an example of where nationalising something has raised the productivity of that business?
We are not doing it in order to raise productivity. We're doing it in order to be fair to consumers, because we want the profits that are made from those industries reinvested for the benefits of the people.
If you don't raise the productivity, there may not be any profits.
Well, perhaps if our trains ran better, our productivity might be improved.
Are you seriously arguing this morning that the productivity of British Rail was higher than the current rail system?
No one's talking about reinventing British Rail. What we're talking about is running a business for the benefit of the people who use that business.
So you would do it even if productivity fell?
Because we think it would improve productivity overall.
Well, you can't give me any examples, though.
Well, we haven't done it.
But plenty of industries have been nationalised in the past. Where did it raise productivity?
What we're talking about is investing in an industry in this country that we think is a vital strategic industry, and doing it for the benefit of the people who use that
regardless of the productivity outcome, when we
think that's for the benefit of the whole economy.
Crisis. 10 billion for Help to Buy, 2 billion for council homes, 1.2 billion to change the tuition fees a bit. That was 13 billion. You got to find 2 billion for the failed reform on national insurance, 1 billion for the DUP deal in Northern Ireland, 1 billion for the delay in the digital tax initiative. Where are you going to get all this money from?
So those are very different figures. So, for example, the university fees, that 1.2 billion is over 3 years, and the money on Help to Buy is money that will be paid back, because essentially that's being loaned to the individuals who then pay back the mortgages.
You have to find the money in the first place.
There are different types of number which you're conflating into a single number.
But they're all additions to public spending in the next couple of years. Can you do all that without raising taxes?
What we need to do is make sure we hit our fiscal targets.
Can you
So
do
we
that
need to
without raising taxes?
I think we can get more productivity in terms of the public spending we do.
Well, the
So let me
OBR
give
has
you-
just said it's not rising. Can you
Let me
do
give you
that
an-
by
can I-
raising without raising taxes?
Well, I think you'll find that the OBR show that public sector productivity has improved over the last 7 years, whereas under Labour it was flat. And I think we can do more to improve public sector productivity.
But the OBR has the latest figures for its latest projections. They know that. It's in the forecast.
So let me give you an example. Over the summer, we put extra money into education to make sure schools were receiving a good level of funding. We found 1.3 billion from existing budgets within the education department to move more money to the front line. And we need to do more of that. We need to do more of finding the money within government coffers and making sure we're getting value for money, because that's what
And
the
then
public
you wouldn't have
want
to raise
see.
taxes.
Absolutely.
So you
We-
won't raise
we-
taxes.
I'm not committing to what's going to be in the budget now. I'm sure
Very
you
well.
can appreciate that.
No,
But the
but-
Conservative Party is a low tax party.
Well, hold on. You're presiding over the highest tax burden in 30 years. The burden, the percentage of taxes as a share of GDP is the highest for 30 years. That's not low tax.
Well, the Labour Party is talking about having the highest levels of peacetime taxation with their policies to spend
But I was
billions
asking
of
about your
pounds.
part. However, let's come back to Labour. Now, it's quite clear there it's not clear how all this money is going to be financed. But compared to the spending commitments your party's making, it pales into insignificant. 200 billion for PFI,
At
100
least-
billion for
well,
nationalisation.
no, hold on, all right.
Where are you going to get that?
OK. Our manifesto was fully costed, is the first point.
Not for the
which is
nationalisation,
a
it
lot more
wasn't.
than Liz can say about hers.
Not for the nationalisation.
On PFI, we're not saying we would spend £200 billion buying back PFI contracts. What we're saying, I know that's what the Tories say we're saying, but we're not. What we're saying is we're going to look at them, each and every one of them, and where it makes good value for money sense for the taxpayer, we will buy them
That's
back.
not what John McDonnell, he said they're
No, that
coming
is what he
back.
said.
They're all coming back, he said.
Oh, I know, I heard that speech. The
He's your
policy-
shadow chancellor.
I know. He doesn't like PFI. And
No,
what we're going
really?
to do...
Did you work that out yourself?
What we're going to do is look at them all and where we need to buy them back, as has happened previously. This isn't something that's a scorched earth
So John
policy.
McDonnell was wrong?
No, John McDonnell was right to say what he did.
No, he
which was
did. Well,
we would
well,
look
look,
at
he
them.
can't be right and wrong.
No, what he said was we are going to bring them back, and we're
All
going to
back?
bring them. No, not all back. Bring them back where it makes good value for money sense, and often it will. And there have been examples of hospitals that have been bought back because it makes sense to do so.
We'll bring an end to this scandal. We'll go further. I can tell you today, it's what you've been calling for. We'll bring existing PFI contracts back in-house, referring to them all. That's what he
Yes.
said. Talking about...
Where it makes good value for money sense to do so. That wouldn't have made quite such a good speech, I can see.
Did you know he was going to say that?
Yes. That was something...
So why didn't you correct him before he made it then?
Oh, well, sadly, we don't have that kind of relationship, Andrew.
Very well. I know when to move on.
I've been getting